many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
To Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. We're going to... I really want to dive into this FBI thing because I think there's a lot of important things to get into this. And I do want to make that a pretty decent focus on today's broadcast. But last broadcast... I didn't get to cover North Korea and South Korea as much as I wanted to. Well, I don't think I even got to really talk about it at all. But it dealt with North Korea and South Korea coming together, and they wanted to do this Olympic thing where they join kind of together as a team and, enter the Olympics. Which, it's brought all the controversy. Really, I think it's up to them what they're planning to do. Of course, you want to keep eye on North Korea, no matter what. But I don't think that, we should go, oh, no, never. I think any way to try to not really just influence the government. It's about more... influencing the people. And if there's points where you can influence the people and that influence spreads in the country, then you don't have to really influence the government. You influence the people, then the small, little tiny dot that is government doesn't have the power that they used to. It's enough people going along with the system that allows that to exist. So, influence the people rather than trying to cut the people off. So, I had this article from, let me bring it up here, from Anti-Media, the antimedia.org, Anti-Media. You can find them on Facebook. You have the broadcast here on UCY. But this one originally came out at antiwar.com, but it was reposted here on Anti-Media. And I'll just read this real quick. White House officials have announced Tuesday that Vice President Mike Pence will attend the Winter Olympics in South Korea in early February, with an eye seemingly toward ensuring that North Korea's attendance of the event doesn't lead to improved relations. Officials say Pence believes North Korea's Kim Jong-un intends to hijack the Winter Olympics with his country's involvement, and that Pence will be there to offset the charade that is North Korea's Olympic team. Bilateral talks between North and South Korea have improved relations in recent weeks, and a big part of that is their agreement on the Olympics. The U.S. clearly has problems with this improved relations between the two and has gone to great lengths to present North Korea as somehow trying to trick everybody in being willing to negotiate. The hope appears to be that Pence can undermine this actual goodwill through exactly how he manages to do this without making the U.S. look like obvious and literal spoil sport remains to be seen. North Korea has been very public about wanting to reduce tensions, but they've also been very public about their nuclear arsenal being aimed and deterring a U.S. attack. And CIA Director Mike Pompeo once again said he doesn't believe that is the case, despite a number of top U.S. officials, including Pompeo, advocating U.S. military intervention against North Korea and imposing regime change. And originally from antiwar.com, it was reposted over at antimedia.org. Both great sites. Check them out. And I'm going to dive into a Ron Paul Liberty Report covering a little bit of this. So we'll go ahead and dive into that, and we'll kind of cover that afterwards.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
I'm doing very well.
Good.
We're going to talk about peace today, and we'll try to avoid the discussion about war. We're trying to prevent war, so we're pro-peace. And right now we want to address the subject of what's going on in Korea with the Winter Olympics coming up. And it goes along with my philosophy that it's best we play sports than shoot missiles at each other.
Yes.
And that it was good when we started playing ping pong with the Chinese, and I always wished we had played more baseball with the Cubans. But anyway, the North Koreans and South Koreans for the first time will be sharing Olympic Games, in South Korea. Now, North Korea has participated in Winter Olympics before, but never in South Korea. They only had one other opportunity, and they didn't go. So this is a special event. The North Koreans are going to go, and they've been getting some good publicity. And it looks like at least the public statements by Un is not saber-rattling, and he's not threatening anybody. And I think he realizes that there's some real benefits coming from this. And it's hard to admit, but I think that they're coming across more on the moral high ground because promoting peace. And when people understand exactly what they're facing, having a weapon isn't the most strange things in the world, especially that if we insist that somebody get rid of their weapons, then we either kill them or take them over or change their administration. But the other news is that Pence is going to be there. And, he's our chief strategist, our chief diplomat. Pence is there to make sure that there's an eye, that we keep an eye on those North Koreans. I mean, they might get a political edge and come out looking good. So he has to make sure that he exposes the charade by Un, if that is what he's going to do. But then I got to thinking, well, he is our vice president, and we always wish him well. But as a diplomat, didn't he just go to the Middle East? And his job his identification with a conservative Christian was to go over there and talk to the Christian. They wouldn't even talk to him. So what is he going to offer in Korea? So I'm not very optimistic because even with his Christian credentials, he also has neoconservative credentials, which seems to outweigh his other credentials, and unfortunately, I don't feel reassured that he's going to do us much good. My big worry about what's going on there now is somebody maybe just laying around thinking about a false flag, and undo all this, because right now it looks like Un is doing pretty well with his PR. Does that mean that we surrender and say, oh, he's a good guy, everything is going to be perfect? But he's in a survival mode. And if he wants to bring people together, there's been some good comments about a couple of the skaters from North Korea. So I would say there's a lot of positive things coming from this. That's why I don't think we need the people who depend on threats to bring about peace. Well, you can't have diplomats without a tremendous amount of weaponry to intimidate the person you're debating with. So I'm hoping for the best for these Winter Olympics.
Yeah, I think something very exciting has happened. It started at the beginning of the year when the North and South started talking. They had a very good first meeting. There is a danger, and I think Washington is terrified, there's a danger that peace may break out. There's an incredible motivation on both sides of the border for reunification. As you pointed out, in the past, South Korea has a minister for reunification. They want to reunify. Well, these games are a great sort of low-cost way of increasing that momentum, because it's not political, it's sport, although it is political. But as you suggested, there'll be a joint women's hockey team, North and South, and the two will march together under a single Korean flag. Those two things have never happened together. There's more cooperation and coordination between the North and South than there ever has been, and it's the talks and the games together. There was a headline in the New York Times last week that I think captures everything and why Washington is so behind the motion that's happening. They said Olympic détente upends U.S. strategy on North Korea. So the fact that they're getting along is completely messing up our strategy.
Yeah, that messes things up. But, President Moon, President of South Korea, has his problems, too, because no matter which country you talk about, United States, whether it's Russia or even Israel, everybody has a faction that's much tougher, on policy, and others are more diplomatically motivated. So I understand Moon is receiving a lot of backlash from this, from his hawks, but then you get to thinking about it. I wonder what percentage that is. Is it a big percentage? Is it small? Are they noisy? Are they part of the military industry? Are they part of our group of people that we deal with in South Korea? So he has to contend with that. But right now, he's had to be careful because he can't, flaunt his independence. He's not ready to do that with the United States. But it looks like, he has to deal with that and put up with it. So hopefully he sticks to his guns. I don't think he's going to back off. The only thing that could make things change dramatically would be some incident. And I cannot see for a minute that China would want an incident. Russia doesn't need an incident. North Korea right now, I don't believe for a minute that it would be in North Korea's interest. But it's always conceivable when you think about ships, colliding and airplanes flying close to other airplanes. There just seems like room for a problem to come up, and I just sure hope that doesn't happen.
Well, it may shock some of our viewers, but the idea of false flags is nothing unusual. Look, we're seeing something in Syria, for example, right now. Just as the U.S. position becomes more and more untenable of remaining in Syria, all of a sudden we had yesterday Secretary of State Tillerson talking about another chemical attack. Some 20 people were reportedly injured. And, of course, this is an ongoing thing what the U.S. does. So there could well be something. Patrick Lawrence, who writes for Salon, I think is one of the most astute observers of the international scene, a very seasoned reporter. He had a really good piece, I think it was today or yesterday, and he made a couple interesting points. He said, the Western media never points out some things about Kim Jong-un. One of them is that he's educated in Switzerland. So he's not some guy who's just been in a hole somewhere in North Korea. He's educated in Switzerland. He said he's behaving like more of a rational actor than many others. He's looking to dialogue. His hope is that the North-South dialogue will lead to a reduction of sanctions on North Korea. So he's acting in a very rational way. He has experience with the West. He knows how to negotiate. As you say, it doesn't mean we're on his cheerleading squad, but it means that he's behaving in a rational way. It's actually the U.S. that's acting irrationally because we don't want the North and South to start getting along because it ruins our strategy.
And I mentioned about the moral high ground, and I think people who are defending their homeland are always on the moral high ground regardless of what their philosophies are. But when you go a long distance to get involved, you lose a little bit of that moral high ground. You know, just recently they released the National Defense Strategy, the report, and I think you probably have studied that a little bit more than I have. But it's what I looked at in some of the summaries. It's sort of the same old stuff, you know, advocating more weaponry and more activity. Yeah, we'll talk to people, but on our terms. Yes, we're for peace, but we will dictate the terms of the peace. So I was looking for things in there about specifically on Korea, but Korea's still, they're the bad guys, and around there's bad guys too, and that goes all the way back to George W. Bush. You know, he put them up. But, you know, that's the bigger picture. We're looking at an incident where we deal with, you know, North and South Korea, but the strategy is the bigger picture, and probably in many ways gives you a hint about why there's a dilemma in dealing with the North and South Korea. But, you know, I was looking at the number of bombs that have been dropped over the last last decade or so. And Obama dropped 100,000 bombs. And we think of him as being less aggressive because less people died under Obama than they did under Bush. But Bush, he only dropped 70,000 bombs.
What a loser.
But now Trump, he's dropped some bombs. He's up to almost 40,000 in one year. So that's a reflection of the National Defense Strategy. But that shouldn't shock us. It disappoints us. But why should we be shocked? Because I don't think Trump has hesitated to talk about being a tough guy and build up our military, have more bombs, refurbish the nuclear weapons. And, you know, and it mentioned in there they have to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. But they didn't mention that, you know, maybe we ought to have moderation in building new nuclear weapons and talk about the $1.2 trillion that's in motion since Obama to build up more nuclear weapons. So that part isn't there. So I think you have the individual problems like in Korea. You have the propaganda strategy, but then I think the other thing is policy strategy and what our policy ought to be. And I think that's where we are trying to talk about the responsibility of a country that brags about liberty and brags about peace and brags about exceptionalism and our moral obligation to police the world. I mean, I think that's where the real debate should be.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, Andrew Basovich, who we've had on the show and we've also known for a long time, has a great article in the American Conservative magazine today about the new defense strategy. And he makes the point that this has nothing to do with defense. This is not a defense strategy. This is a call for more money for the military-industrial complex. I think the subtitle was Champagne Corks Are Popping at the Pentagon, because he makes a great point. In the past decade of this war on terror, we've spent $11 trillion. And he said the American people should ask, what have we gotten for this money? Now they're coming and saying, we need more. The defense strategy itself says that that the military has been allowed to wither. It's been withering. What are you talking about, withering? They've been more robust. They've been more active than ever. So what's going on with this $1 trillion more that you want every year? What are we getting for the money we've spent?
Yeah.
There's not much there.
We need to do that. You know, one or two people that got a lot of attention, North Koreans, or two skaters, a man and a woman. And evidently they're good PR people, delightful and very pleasant, and they travel the world because they skate around the world. It's not like they just live in North Korea. You know, they participate. And I saw one place where it said that they skate to a rendition. Now, I need your opinion about this because you probably know the significance of this a lot more than I do. They dance and skate to a rendition of a Beatles song. Huh. So I thought, well, wonder what the either they're not what some people visualize. Even I would visualize. I didn't know they'd even know who the Beatles were, but here it is. It's sort of like somebody snuck it in there because it sort of breaks the ice for some people that they would use a Beatles song.
And I guess pop music is kind of a universal language,
yeah,
in that respect. But the real interesting point, you started out talking about it too, about Mike Pence. The U.S. should be celebrating the idea that the tensions are reducing. But it's interesting, when the talks started between the North and South, that very day, the Wall Street Journal, I think it was, and a couple of other mainstream media outlets started talking about a new White House plan for a bloody nose attack on North Korea. And if that's not propaganda, I don't know what is. Just when the two of them got together, here you have the U.S. media talking about new U.S. plans for an attack on North Korea. They just don't want to let this happen. And that has to do with Pence going there, too. The whole point of him going there is he does not want the North Koreans to hijack the games with their propaganda,
But also another individual that was quoted on that particular point was Pompeo, CIA director. And he was not exactly diplomatic. His was authoritarian and bombs and necessary, and we have to show him and this sort of thing. So that is still alive and well, and they still said nothing is off the table. We would use first strike, and I've heard discussion on TV every once in a while for individuals trying to explain militarily why it's absolutely necessary to never give in and say that you wouldn't use a nuclear weapon before anybody else. You'd use it on first strike, and they think they consider this the most important thing that they could have. It isn't like you had to give up national defense. It's just giving up, a little bit of common sense. So this, unfortunately, that big picture that I was trying to allude to is the thing that needs a lot more attention. But that goes back to some very basics, and that is what should the foreign policy be? Should it be non-interventionism? And, of course, we take that position. We should stay uninvolved. People say, you're an isolationist. You don't want to deal with the world. Matter of fact, we want to almost the opposite. We want to deal with the world in peaceful terms instead of boycotting and sanctioning China and Cuba. We want interchange, interaction with people and trade with people. So this idea is a bum rap when they start saying, you guys are a bunch of isolationists. You want to just close borders. And who's what right now? They're talking about tariffs and protectionism. And even today there was a story about we need a weaker currency. Believe me, they're getting a weaker currency. The dollar's on the ropes. And our Secretary of Treasury is talking about, yes, it's good to have a weaker dollar. But and that's all mischief. That's the opposite. What they're doing is protectionism and isolationism. And unfortunately, if we go in that direction, if there's a trade war, which is very possible, that is isolating us from the world in a serious manner, because when that gets out of control, it's very damaging to everybody on both sides.
Absolutely. Just finishing up on this New York Times piece, because I think it captures the thinking of the administration. The fear they have that North and South are going to get along during the Olympics, and that'll be the story of the games. A couple of quick quotes from the New York Times piece. He said, they said the image of athletes marching behind a united Korea flag is a symbolic manifestation of what worries Trump's aides. North Korea and South Korean crowds cheering together would be a striking contrast to the threats of war from Trump. That's what they're worried about. They're worried about this breaking out. And my final word would be to our viewers, watch what the U.S. media does during these Olympics, because 4 years ago, when they had him in Sochi, that's when Russia really first started being the real bad guy. And remember the commentators on, and I think it was Bob Costas at one of these, on and on about how horrible Russia was and terrible, and all of these horrible things were going to happen in the Olympic Village. None of it happened. I think you're going to see the U.S. media echoing U.S. government propaganda points.
Yeah, there won't be anything new. I think your assessment is right. And sometimes it still surprises me that when you talk about the major newspapers, the Washington Post and the New York Times, and we think of their image as being very left-wing and progressive and therefore probably anti-war, which they never have been. I mean, they were champions of all the wars, especially even recently. So I would not expect that you're going to get real information about what's really going on from those newspapers. It might be a more excuse to tune in to the Liberty Report and find out the real truth about what's going on. And we would welcome you to return to the Liberty Report soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report, RonPaulLibertyReport.com, and Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Check them out, subscribe. Also, follow all the social media apps or sites that you may use. When it comes to this, right now, a lot of alternative, libertarian, conservative, right-leaning websites are actively being censored. I kind of want to look into a little bit more of what's going on, but I know PragerU has a lawsuit, I believe, against YouTube and Google. And if you know anything of Prager University or PragerU, their videos are fact-based videos. They just cover facts. You could say they're maybe libertarian, small government leaning, but it's based on facts that they lay down the facts, and you have to come to your own conclusion from the facts. But basically, their content has been restricted. Well, I urge people to, show their kids a lot of these videos, but that's the thing. They want to censor them, saying that it's not acceptable for younger people. This is, content. And now, I've actively now been seeing slowly website after website where if you try to share articles from right, conservative, libertarian leaning websites, it's slowly happening, but it's definitely happening, and you're going to see a lot more of it. I know one of the first ones to get hit was InfoWars, which I wasn't really surprised on that one, but now it's happening to more and more people. But they are saying that your content is untrusted content, that it's misleading or fake news. So they're actively telling people, oh, this is fake news, according to our fact checker, which it was the Weekly Standard, I think it said, for one website. But part of it is Media Matters is in a lot of these companies, directing them of what's fake news and what's not. So it's extremely biased. But, I think that's why it's real important to follow, people like Ron Paul and others on these social media platforms, because then if you're going to reach out to people that don't know or haven't yet learned about small government or libertarian ideas, completely exiting these platforms, probably not a good way to do it. Now, what we have to do is try to also figure out how to better approach some of these issues in a way that hopefully maybe won't be picked up by algorithm if your sites or your content hasn't been yet censored on one of these platforms, and to really push for full and open, if you're going to have one of these social media platforms that's supposed to be open to all and be a place where people can share ideas, and then you say, but these ideas are fake, don't listen. Well, then you're kind of being, you know, a little bit hypocritical on what you say you're trying to do. Well, I want to make it a free and open place for ideas to be shared, except for those ideas. Well, you didn't say that before, you know. Now you're saying, oh, because I don't agree, it's fake. So, you know, whether it be Anti-Media, Ron Paul, you know, other websites that you may follow, UCY, try to follow on every platform you're on, and really show your support for these alternative media outlets. And I'm not saying alt-right, I'm alternative media. Alt-right's a very dirty name that's been associated with, you know, neo-Nazis, and really I've never considered libertarian right-leaning. I may have some, you know, personal, you know, beliefs that are more conservative right-leaning, but I also have some, you know, things that I would probably be left-leaning on. I'm somewhere in the middle. So it's one of those deals that, you know, I'm a libertarian. I believe people have the right, as long as you're not harming other people. And that, I think that's really where people have lost it, is they want to impose their personal life or their personal beliefs on someone. Not share, but impose. And when you do that, you just create the infighting. And that's what we have. And I believe that they play us this way. The people that are pulling all the strings, the people that are making the moves, that are getting uber rich, keep us infighting over ways, you know, that are pretty futile if you look at it. You're not going to be able to impose your belief, not even on, you know, look at it, you know, your kids might share a lot of ideas that you have, but they are never going to believe everything you believe. They're never going to, you know, want to live that same lifestyle. So, you know, it'll always continue to go back and forth, and that's where you get, oh, you know, right versus left. Excuse me. Now, I do kind of want to dive into this FBI deal that's going on. I have a few clips, but I do want to play another Ron Paul Liberty Report. And then I have a We Are Change, but I do have an article to go over in between those two. I really wasn't planning on playing two, but I did want to cover the North Korea and South Korea thing that I missed on the last broadcast before I dove into this. But right now, we have an FBI that is losing all credibility. There is a lot of evidence that's pointing towards a cover-up and Russia collusion, but not with Trump. With the Obama administration, with the Clintons, the Clinton Foundation, and Uranium One. And the mainstream media is not covering this sufficiently. Because there's a lot more to this. And this has nothing to do with the, you know, Trump investigation. If there's going to be a Trump investigation, Okay. But this is apart from that. Now, I do believe that there might be a connection with Mueller when it comes to the further you get into this uranium, FBI investigation, Clinton, all of this. I think there might be, something that might pull Mueller. Does that say that, well, if that means just stop investigating Trump? If there's evidence that points to there being collusion with the Trump, yeah, keep investigating. But the problem is I believe this is really discrediting to the FBI. And there were reports before that there were people that said they had sources within the FBI that did say that, they feel that their efforts are undermined by people higher up in the FBI. So these are more than likely people that are more field agents, where they've been there, they've seen, evidence that's been turned over. And then when they see, how the investigation ends, they're like, well, I did my job. I feel good that I did my job. I'm just kind of upset that the people higher up didn't, follow through. But I'm going to cover this Ron Paul Liberty Report. Let's get into this. I got an article that I want to cover, and then a We Are Change clip. I think that's a 3-minute clip or something. But let's go ahead and dive into this one.
Most of our history, we didn't have those institutions. The FBI came in during the First World War. And interestingly enough, the one thing that Woodrow Wilson did, he used the FBI to spy on American citizens and actually arrest them if they disagreed with his foreign policy about going to war in Europe. And isn't it interesting how recent they used it in the Vietnam era? Democrats used it there, and Republicans used the FBI to spy on 100 different groups in this country, including the churches, who disagree with the policy in Central America. It almost looks like the FBI was designed to spy on Americans who might be disagreeing with policy, especially the foreign policy. So the FBI...
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
I'm doing very well.
Who is that gentleman?
I'm related to him, But guess what we're going to talk about today? Is the FBI. We're going to talk about the FBI because they protect us and keep us safe and secure, and they watch the government very carefully so they don't get out of line. What a mess, But, this is an important subject. It certainly has been in the news. The FBI has been in the news for a long time, but they never seem to come across as doing things what they should be doing. It's always intrigue and spying on people, and even back to Martin Luther King, these kind of things. They're up to all kinds of problems. And one thing is you don't mess with the FBI. When the FBI comes, you better toe the line. But it seems to me that from looking at this material going on with Russiagate, which has been going on for a long time, and we haven't talked a whole lot about it, is that we're not hearing the full story from the government, but it's finally coming out. Now, the big story right now about this whole issue has been the release of the text messages between two people from the FBI talking about their type of coup, and that is not only to prevent Trump from getting in, but how to get rid of him and this sort of thing. And all of a sudden, can you believe it? The FBI has this information, 50,000 texts, and the Congress can't get it. and they're in a stalemate, but there's hope there that they'll still get it. But obviously, it's pretty important information. But I just can't believe it that once this was discovered and they said it was mailed, it has been sent to the agency, they've lost it. And now that's a serious problem. So I just can't believe the FBI would be that clumsy.
And they said it was because of software updates that 5 months of these text messages between the two officers who were involved in the Russiagate investigation, they just couldn't be found. The data that should have been automatically collected and retained for long-term storage and retrieval was not collected, is what they said. Amazingly enough, this is such a coincidence, they were able to start the retrieval again the day that Mueller was announced as the special counsel. So right up until that day, they just couldn't get those messages.
Right, and they needed to keep this scenario going because the excuse for having Mueller was the fact that Trump and his gang, had been taking orders from Russia and all this kind of intrigue. And no matter what was said on the Republican side, it just didn't hold water. So they had to have proof. And actually, they got working on this early on in the campaign. And I think it sort of started off with Republicans against Republicans to discredit Trump because they didn't want him. And all of a sudden, things started to change when Trump was running against Hillary. Then Hillary picked up the pieces. We have to destroy this guy. And then I think where the big mistake on their part was, they were acting as if they had already been, anointed king. And they would never have to worry about anybody. And then they acted outside the law and did all of these kind of things. And then, of course, the monkey wrench was Trump actually winning the election.
Yeah. And as we know now that this famous dossier, this is the gospel of the Russiagators, was started out being paid for by a neocon who did not want Trump. He wanted an establishment. I think he wanted Marco Rubio or someone to be president. It was Washington Examiner, neocon newspaper in D.C. was the one behind it, paid by a big neocon donor. They took the information from this dossier and pretended that it was something that was, this big thing. They took it to the FISA court. FISA, of course, approves 99% of the requests and was used to open an FBI investigation, wiretaps and everything into the Trump campaign based on this very, very dubiously sourced information.
Which finally led to the appointment of the special prosecutor. Exactly. And now it's ongoing, but now they're getting hot on a trail and they want some information. Lo and behold, it doesn't look like it's going to be available. We have some members of Congress that are watching this carefully and demanding that they get this. But the disturbing thing is that I've heard, said, and it's true because they have to check everything out. Yes, they're checking this over to make sure that the American people can handle what's in these documents. And they said what we're going to do is it has to be reviewed by the CIA and for national security reasons because you don't want to do anything. And when I hear this thing, it's done for national security. We fight wars to fight and defend our Constitution and national security, and it has nothing to do with the truth. It's just fake news, fake excuses, and yet I think that's where they are right now. They have to get clearance, and then you just wonder when it finally comes. I'm not so sure, but I think this big story about the Kennedy release of the Kennedy papers, and some papers were released, but I don't think the whole thing came out. Remember, they did that, and they said, and then there was a rule, and then it left the news anymore. And that's generally what they do. They'll monkey around with this, and they might release something to try to satisfy some people. But, we'll black this out, this for national security reasons. And that, of course, is why people, believe that the control of our government isn't controlled by the people that are supposed to.
Representative John Radcliffe of Texas. He saw some of the text. Of course, we lost the juicy bits. These 5 months supposedly lost the real juicy bits. But from what he's seen, he saw references to a secret society that's going to meet. This is after the election. They're trying to figure out how do we undermine this president. We didn't want this guy in. We thought we're going to be on easy street with President Hillary, and all of a sudden the wrong guy wins. So now what are we going to do? A secret society comes together. They have insurance policies to undermine the president. I think another word for secret society might be deep state.
Yeah, that is right. But the fact that they don't come clean with this, and they get away so often over the years with suppressing information. They either suppress it, alter it, or destroy it. And I keep thinking of the double standard they have. If an American citizen, one of the worst things an American citizen could ever do would be to lie to an FBI agent. But the FBI agents are allowed to lie all the time, and they get away with it. They get rid of evidence, and not very often do they ever get punished. They get sort of caught, and they might get reassigned. But even some of these other incidents over the last several decades, the FBI's, and even most recently with Bundy. I mean, who's going to get punished for these things? But it's the FBI that has, instigated so much of this and participated in it. So it's almost, it is secret government. It's lawlessness. And that is the reason over the years I have taken the position that, we lived at one time without an FBI. We lived at one time without a CIA. And we were in fewer wars. And we were not unsafe because of that. So this whole idea that they're keeping us safe, it's for national security, and we have a responsibility to commit the noble lives because we're taking care of the people. It's sort of nauseating at times on what they do in the lying and the scheming. And this, to me, is good news in the sense that a lot of people know, that they're steamrolling this. The trouble is there's too much partisanship in this, and you might put out the so-called partisanship or the control of the deep state, because if this is all true and Trump knows it and the administration knows it and they're being rolled, and then both the Republicans and the Democrats just recently they support FISA and spying on Americans. The very problem that we have, how can you expect them to undertake this job of cleaning this mess up when they're voting to give these guys more power? It's legal, it's not moral, and it's not constitutional, but our Congress keeps to do it. So how are they going to research this and give us the real information on it? This is why, I hope I'm wrong. I hope we do find out a lot more and actually get to read these that will reveal who really did what. But I'll have to wait and see, because the one rule that I've had for myself is when we had commissions coming up, a Kennedy Commission or whatever, I always saw it as a scheme to cover up so that nobody gets blamed. And then when you do get caught, you sort of get moved around. And that's what we have to be careful with. But I still think that we're better off knowing this information, and there's information, even if it's for the narrow partisan reasons, because, if the shoe was on the other foot, they wouldn't care that much.
It is funny you point out about the FISA. The Democrats say, we don't trust this president. We don't trust this president. Well, we'll vote to let him spy on all of us without a warrant.
Yeah.
But you talked earlier about the FBI and how it is doing things that we would be thrown in jail. Well, look at Michael Flynn. They entrapped him. They had all of the intercepts of things that he said about Russia, and then they interviewed him. Stupidly, he agreed to go there without an attorney. And when his testimony deviated slightly from what they had recorded, they threw the book at him. So this is what they do. And our friend Jim Bovard, who's always great on these things, he has a piece in The Hill yesterday where he points out that losing evidence is a long-standing procedure for the FBI. This is not an anomaly. He talks about Patrick Gray, who burned incriminating evidence of White House involvement in Watergate back in '73. Ruby Ridge, where they actually, this is the one time when an FBI agent did go to jail for falsifying and destroying evidence. Waco assault, they suppressed mountains of evidence. You mentioned the Cliven Bundy case. What about Hillary Clinton, where the FBI agreed to destroy her computers and didn't bat an eye when she bleach-bitted the whole things to save us from knowing what she had on those private servers? So as Jim points out, this is kind of what they do.
You know, in general, people give them a pass on entrapment, but entrapment is a very, very dangerous procedure. And it was even used at Ruby Ridge. I think the story there was that they worked real hard to try to talk him into sawing the end of his rifle off and make him participate. But they do it on drug cases just to convict somebody. But they themselves, the FBI agents, or whoever's doing it to entrap, they have to participate in the disobedience of the law. They have to disobey the law as well, but that's okay because they're doing it for good purposes. But the principle should be the same. Disobeying and setting a guy up in order to entrap him, and usually they're unsophisticated people, you know, just go along and yet they get somebody to they can put away and get some credit for it. But entrapment in general should not be permitted in a free society because it's nothing more than mischief given these people who abuse the law anyway with this ability to enforce and go out and find somebody. And I've seen this rather up close, and it's not nice to be a victim of.
Very ugly. But you know, it is nice to see the Russiagate issue falling apart because the whole thing was so preposterous from the beginning. We're supposed to believe that Putin saw many, many years ago that this game show host and real estate developer is someday going to be president. So we have to put all of these things in motion to entrap him when he goes to Russia, videotape him and do all these things because someday he might be president and we'll have some goods on him. You know, it's so preposterous. But so what it is turning out to be is the deep state, and it's an overused term, but there is some accuracy to it. They were terrified of candidate Trump when he said a couple of things that threatened their gravy train. NATO is obsolete, and we should get along with Russia. That's the entire Washington security establishment. Billions of dollars, lots of mansions. That was a threat. They thought they could prevent him from being president by bringing up some of these things. And then, when against all odds he won, they thought, oh my gosh, what are we going to do now? We got to undermine this guy and get him impeached. This is what's coming out, and it's big stuff.
Well, you know, what's going on, there's a lot of intimidation. I feel intimidation, even though I resist it all the time, just doing our program.
Yeah. Because
we know that if we use certain words, things will get flagged, and who knows what that means. So there's a little bit of that caution that you can't talk about war or say something about terrorism because you know those words are going to be monitored. But isn't it amazing that these people who are in the FBI, they use these tools all the time, and they participate in it, and they think that there's no recording. And here these two FBI agents had 50,000 texts doing all kinds of nonsense on it, figuring, oh, I'm above everything. They must develop some type of a superiority complex. But part of that, of course, was, oh, my friend Hillary's going to be president. We don't have a thing to worry about. So if nothing else, that is good that there was a great surprise with fooling these people into thinking that they could go on forever without ever being caught.
Yeah. You know, as the judge would say, Judge Napolitano might say, if the FBI can't find these messages, they should just call the NSA because they probably got them somewhere stored in Utah. But I want to end with a good news story. I'm all about the silver lining, as you know. And let's take the FBI at face value when they say that the data that should have been automatically collected on these people wasn't automatically collected. Let's hope that's true for all of us.
Oh boy, you're dreaming, but I guess when you have dreams, you can have good dreams. But anyway, I want to thank our audience for tuning in today. This is not the simplest matter because there's been so much politicking about it off and on for a couple years now. And we generally haven't talked too much about it, but it just got to be too much with this, how powerful they think they are, that they are going to be able to cover up or not release these 50,000 texts, which may reveal something of great interest. It may happen. I'm skeptical. I still think that the goal of all government agencies is to cover up and not punish government agencies and to go after them. And once they start talking about it, we better be careful because national security is at stake. They never care about the liberty of the American people is at stake. That is what the real chore should be. That should be our goal for all of us. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report, RonPaulLibertyReport.com, Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. The funny thing is, these texts are supposedly lost, and it's right in that time frame. Yeah, pretty fishy there. And then on top of it, there should be backups. Why not backups of the backups? Taking it's the law for you to keep records of that. So now we don't have the records. Well, I have this article here. This one from the Gateway Pundit. And this says Trey Gowdy on Struzok page, FBI text. Today we saw a text about not keeping text. According to Attorney General Jeff Sessions, 50,000 text messages were exchanged between Peter Struzok and his mistress, Lisa Page. These 50,000 text messages do not include the missing text. Representative John Ratcliffe said after reviewing the new text messages, he believes there may have been a secret society of folks within the DOJ and FBI working against Trump. Representative John Ratcliffe and Trey Gowdy spoke with Fox News on Monday after the news broke about the 50,000 new text messages. The Federalist reported Gowdy said the explanation for the missing text messages may be fishier than the official explanation, saying he saw Struzok and Page discuss getting rid of text in a printout of the messages he and other members of Congress received last week. Lay aside the glaring 5 months gap in text that the world's premier agency somehow missed. The bias of these agents, Gowdy began. What Johnny and I saw today was a text about not keeping text. We saw more manifest bias against President Trump all the way through the election into transition. It's a strange coincidence, Ratcliffe said. It's possible these messages that were missing, perhaps it's a strange coincidence. At Ratcliffe, on a 5-month gap discovered in new FBI texts for former prosecutors, Trey Gowdy and myself make it harder and harder for us to explain away one strange coincidence after another. And then I have this article, pjmedia.com. Senator Ron Johnson, FBI informant, says secret society held secret meetings off-site. An FBI informant has apparently informed Congress that a secret society at the FBI was holding secret meetings off-site after the election of Donald Trump. On a special report with Brett Baer Tuesday evening, Senator Ron Johnson called it corruption of the highest levels of the FBI. That secret society, we have an informant that's talking about a group that were holding secret meetings off-site, Johnson said. There's so much smoke here. This comes after text messages between FBI counterintelligence agent Peter Strzok and senior FBI lawyer Lisa Page, his paramour, revealed that a secret society of officials within the FBI met the day after the election of Donald J. Trump to plot against the president-elect. A secret society bare-ass secret meetings off-site of the Justice Department, and you have an informant saying that. Yes, Johnson answered, matter-of-factly. Is there anything more about that, bare-ass? So we're really seeing an unraveling of the corruption. Now, I'm not saying that maybe, Donald Trump doesn't have, some things he's trying to hide that, maybe a Russia investigation. But the thing is, how long has that been going on, and what has it produced? Look at this, what's coming out about this and how quick it's coming out. You know what that almost tells me? That there's people within the FBI that they're tired of it. They're done. They're turning over basically the secret society. Slowly more and more is coming out. But there's still people in there willing to try to cover it up, hide it up, I want to play this short clip here from We Are Change, FBI Secret Society.
Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here for wearechange.org, and today we're going to go over the latest revelations in this FBI texting/sexting scandal. You see, these texts are from an FBI agent and his mistress, and they are extremely revealing from what we know so far. Now let's be clear, none of these texts have been made public, and we're relying mostly by hearsay of members of Congress and Senate. However, what they're telling is quite extraordinary. First of all, the assertion that 5 months of this man's texts have been lost and that they cannot be found is absolutely absurd. We know that the National Security Agency collects all digital communications. So if this were actually the case, they could easily obtain those text messages if they wanted to. However, all the evidence leads to the fact that they don't want to. Number one, the text seemed to indicate it was a foregone conclusion that Clinton would not be prosecuted, and this had been decided long before the investigation was complete. Another startling revelation is that only 2 days after the Russian probe began, this man basically said there was nothing to it and began discussing deleting his text messages. But perhaps the most startling revelation of all is that there may be a secret society within the FBI working against the Trump administration. Now, however fantastic this sounds, it was alluded to in a text right after the election. Now, Representative Gowdy went on Fox News early in the morning and discussed this.
What's also troubling to me is this text that Johnny Radcliffe found last night about this secret society. Now, I have no clue what that means because that was not the phraseology I used, but it's the day after the election, and it's the same two people that were discussing a little bit later in the text the damage they had done with the Clinton investigation and how they could, quote, fix it.
And later on, Representative Ratcliffe joined him in expanding on the matter.
We learned today about information that in the immediate aftermath of his election, that there may have been a secret society of folks within the Department of Justice and the FBI, to include Page and Strzok, that would be working against him. I'm not saying that actually happened, but when folks speak in those terms, they need to come forward to explain the context with which they use those terms.
Senator Johnson then took to television and said that they had an informant that has confirmed that indeed meetings of this secret society have taken place.
What this is all about is further evidence of corruption, more than bias, but corruption at the highest levels of the FBI and that secret society. We have an informant that's talking about a group that were holding secret meetings off-site.
Now let me be clear. I don't think this is a secret society with occultic backgrounds such as the Illuminati or the Bohemian Grove or even Skull and Bones. However, history has shown us that high-level officials in the FBI, in the NSA, and in the Central Intelligence Agency indeed were members of these collegiate organizations. Some Book and Snake, some Scroll and Key, and yes, some Skull and Bones, but this does not strike me to have an occult tone. Instead, this is a bunch of people that truly did not want to see Trump elected and worked in their interests behind the scenes to try to make sure that that did not occur. And when it did, tried to overthrow him. This channel has never been a cheerleader for the Trump administration. However, when the evidence is so overwhelming that elements in the FBI not only didn't want to see Trump elected, but worked in their interests afterwards to try to take that election away from him, we have to report on it. And as always, if you like this video, please share it on social media. Follow me on Twitter @JasonBurmis. Hit that like and subscribe button, and please go to wearechange.org. Make that donation. It's only through your financial support that reports like this one are possible.
wearechange.org. We Are Change on YouTube. Check them out. Subscribe. Now, really, if a lot of this turns out to be true, if they're going to hold them accountable, there's almost treasonous actions if this turns out to be true. It's allegations, it's theories, but there's a lot of evidence that's starting to pour out. Again, it almost looks like there's, a good portion of the FBI that they're tired of it. But there are still elements within it that are trying to cover their butt. How far will this go? I'm not sure, but it's definitely amping up. And there's potential that it might undermine a Trump investigation, but I think by now there should be evidence coming out. And they try to keep alluding to, there's going to be this evidence that's going to come out. Jeff Sessions was interviewed. They want to interview Trump, and it's all coming to a head. But there's never been really any evidence that's come out. Or now, this investigation and them looking into this, there's already stuff flooding out. What texts they do say they have is revealing so much. There's apparently an informant that is saying, yes, the secret society is meeting off-site and discussing these things. Which there's texts between them talking about a secret society. It's a group of FBI that are trying to use the tools of the FBI and their political connections to try to undermine President Trump. And what undermining them, how far does this go within the FBI, within maybe other organizations? What connection, there's already text there talking about the Clinton investigation. What connections, how far connected are they with the Clintons? Uranium One. All of this is starting to come to head, where it's looking like a attempt to basically undermine the electoral process. And it looks like it's coming from a lot of different angles. And after the election, after the loss, it seems like it's been amped up. Now we have to undermine. We couldn't prevent his election, but let's undermine him now. Where have you seen that? In all the left news organizations. Without any proof, a lot of speculation, they have brutally attacked the president. Brutally attacked the right. But they didn't hold Obama to the same oh, we don't like Trump doing this. Well, you let Obama do this. Well, that's because we agree with that. Well, it's still someone's right. You want your rights, we want our rights. We have a libertarian advocates for everybody's right, not just one side. Someone that has a moral argument for rights argues for all rights and not privilege. Not, oh, more rights for this group or more rights for that group. Equal rights. And forcing someone to do something is not a right. Okay, let me bring this article up. Okay, GOP, this out of Politico. GOP escalates law enforcement probes as Russia inquiry heats up. This is kind of part of what I was talking about. Mid-news signs that special counsel Robert Mueller is pursuing an obstruction of justice case against President Donald Trump. Republicans in Congress have intensified their own investigation of the Justice Department and the FBI's handling of inquiries into Trump's ties to Russia. Tuesday brought several dramatic developments in the Russia saga, including the news that Mueller recently interviewed Attorney General Jeff Sessions, the first cabinet official known to be questioned in the investigation. The New York Times also reported that former FBI Director James Comey was interviewed by Mueller last year. Well, Jeff Sessions recused himself from the investigation. That's probably why he was interviewed. Why did you accuse yourself? What connection with Russia? Well, I was in this. Well, that's not really reason to, you were official at the time. You can meet with Russia. Well, I was also on the Trump campaign. Well, did you collude? No, I didn't. But I figured that because I had that connection, I probably should have, been in charge of the investigation. That's probably how that went. But even as Mueller showed apparent momentum, Republicans made new charges of political bias and even political criminal misconduct in the nation's top law enforcement agencies. On Fox News, Representative Bob Goodlatte, chairman of the House Committee that oversees the Justice Department and FBI, alleged that anti-Trump conspiracy by FBI agents whose text messages exchanges have been made public in selective bursts by GOP lawmakers. Some of these texts are very disturbing, Goodlatte said, adding they illustrate a conspiracy on the part of some people, and we want to know a lot more about that. A daily play-by-play of congressional news in your inbox. Oh, never mind. By signing you up... sorry. I'm trying to read this article paragraph by paragraph, and I'm looking at an all-text format, so I'm getting the ads, too. Republicans have been particularly incensed by a new revelation from the FBI that 5 months of text messages between a senior counterintelligence agent in the Bureau, Peter Schwarzak, who was dismissed from Mueller's team for unspecified reasons in July, and FBI attorney Lisa Page appear to be missing. It says here, Republicans have been particularly incensed this is a pretty big deal. Incest, Politico, really? Incest? Yeah, it's not incest. It's going, hold on. By law, you have to have these records, and it just happens that the time period that this falls, it's kind of the time period we are needing to look at. Huh. Now we got text saying that, hey, we probably shouldn't keep text, or we should delete text. We should erase records of this. Yeah. It says the Bureau revealed to Congress over the weekend that it hadn't retained the messages, which officials attributed to technical problems with the Bureau's storage system. Just happened to fall in that time period. Just happened. Again, there's still people in the Bureau that are trying to cover this up, hide their tracks. It didn't even have to be one of those two that got rid of the records. It could have been people that were a part of this group that wanted to undermine the presidency. Basically, a coup. Meanwhile, congressional Republicans pushing to release a secret memo they have drafted based on classified intelligence, which they claim reveals anti-Trump bias in the FBI, got a boost on Tuesday from the White House, which called for full transparency on the issue. Separately, a GOP lawmaker on the House Judiciary Committee indicated that there were plans to recall Comey to testify about his handling of the 2016 investigation into Hillary Clinton. Congressional Democrats say it's no accident that the GOP probes have escalated as Mueller has honed in on Trump's top allies, Representative Adam Schiff of California, Jerry Nader of New York, and Elijah Cummings of Maryland, the top Democrats on the three GOP-led committees. Unearthing internal FBI documents say the Republican efforts smack on a partisan campaign to protect the president, and solely the investigators who have questioned his behavior. Notes that you've been attacking and losing every attack that you try to, oh, he's mentally not there. Oh, well, yeah, bad guy. Yeah, bad. That's all they can do. You prove them wrong, they're still bad. We don't like them. And now the tables are turning. I think there's Democrats getting scared. And I think, really, if this is truly investigated, this could blow a lot of deep state people out of hiding. But will they actually go that far? Really, they want to silence people on this. I think a lot of maybe the Mueller investigation, because there should be evidence. We should have had something by now. I'm sorry. This has been going on long enough. Oh, they're honing in. No. I'm sorry. No. There's already stuff popping out about this investigation. No. They're not honing in. No. You'd have something by now. After this came out, definitely you'd be like, hold on. Look at all this. They're trying to sidetrack you. Here's this evidence against Trump. This is what we got so far. No, I really think that they're trying to make that an excuse. They interviewed Jeff Sessions, though. Well, yeah, because he recused himself from the investigation. That should be expected. That's not something they're honing in because they interviewed him. No. We're going to uncover something here soon. Just hold on. No. You're trying to sidetrack us from what's going on. Now, again, if they do have evidence, then, say we got plenty of evidence. Now we're interviewing Trump. Be transparent. But that's not what's going on. But it seems that the tables are turning on the other side. People are fed up. I really just wonder how far this will end up going. How far are they willing to take it? Because a lot of times what will happen in these situations, they'll go after a few people, the scapegoats. But it would be too much to try to go after everyone. They like trying to go after the people that are the easiest. Oh, it sounded like I lost connection. Hopefully it's still there. Okay, yeah, my connection's still there. Everything went quiet there for a second. Okay, I do want to move on here. Give me a second. Okay, this is one from We Are Change. And this is talking about Bitcoin. People have been speculating on what Bitcoin is. I've speculated on what Bitcoin will do. I had my predictions, and if I could pull it up here quick enough, I can tell you what Bitcoin's at right now. And here. According to Coinbase, it's at 11,342, which is about where I said it would be. I said it would be around 10,000, somewhere around there. It would level off. And what's happened? Let's pull up here last month. In the last month, it's went down 2,632.9, basically 11 or 18.9% drop. It's had a high of 17,000, which I didn't think it would get that high. A low of 8,950, which I didn't think it would get quite that low. I was thinking around 9,000, which that's close, but I thought 9,000 is the stretch. I thought maybe 15, maybe 16,000 is top stretch. It went a little bit above that. And that's in the last month. But to look at the past week, you're at about 1.9% increase here in the past week, taking it to 11,333 now is what that's saying. 327.4, and I can keep loading, it'll update, and it's really going to probably it can go up a little bit, it could go down a little bit. I don't think it's going away quite yet. And actually, I think that if you start seeing it level off, that will actually do it some good. People think, we should see it go up more. I really don't think that would be good. To see it level off and gain somewhat of a more steadier, increase and decrease to stabilize it, actually it'll be beneficial for it in the long run. But let me get to this. We Are Change. Will government ban Bitcoin? What you need to know.
Our military heroes.
We'll get rid of this commercial real quick.
Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings, to a show that still does not have a name. If you have any name recommendations, let us know in the comment section below. But of course, I am joined by Josh of World Alternative Media. And last week, we told you, we're starting a new show. If it does well, we will do it every Saturday. We're back here, but the show had only 15,000 views and with 500,000 subscribers, and also YouTube finagling, the video didn't do well. But I'm having a lot of fun. I'm enjoying working with Josh. And basic principles, if I like doing something, I'm going to keep doing it. So we're back here with the latest updates with cryptocurrencies. Josh, how are you, and what is happening right now in the crypto world?
Well, Luke, there was a massive crash in the market, not a collapse, but a crash. And that was basically due to, we hit about $20,000 about a month ago for one Bitcoin in US dollars. And we saw a dip back and forth, and it kind of came at the same time as these future contracts came out for Bitcoin. And what I believe to have happened was there was at one point a few days ago a massive sell-off, and there's so much money sold out of the market that I do believe that it was a big banker sell-off, which caused a whole bunch of panic. And that panic led to a bunch of what they call minnows, people with small amounts of Bitcoin, all selling off out of panic. Now, of course, it went all the way down to about 9,000 US dollars, and it's climbed past the 11,800 wall today to around 13,000. And it's breaking all this resistance that the market has had over the past few days, and I do believe it's going to continue to go up. But again, there is a massive amount of market manipulation like there is with anything. So banks hate Bitcoin. They want nothing to do with Bitcoin when it comes to the average everyday person because it brings down their pyramid, I guess you could say. But when it comes down to it, they also want to get in on it, and they want to make as much profit off of it, because why wouldn't they? We've seen the same thing with gold and silver. Deutsche Bank was caught rigging gold and silver for many years and was caught in a court of law alongside HSBC and a whole bunch of other banks. So this is very usual to happen, but I don't think that there's any reason to really worry. I still see it going to about $100,000 by the end of 2018. Now, this isn't financial advice. This is simply my opinion. I have to legally say that, but I think that we are in for a massive climb in the future, and there's a lot of things that contribute to this. So I wanted to quickly mention before we go on to the next headline, Luke, that a lot of people are investing a lot of money into altcoins that they know nothing about outside of Bitcoin. They are throwing billions of dollars into these coins because they like what they look like. They don't understand them. They don't know the fundamentals. And in that case, it's kind of the same thing as your wife, rooting for a football team because, I don't know, maybe she likes dolphins or she likes the look of the jerseys. This is incredibly important to understand because while the derivatives in the .com bubble don't exactly mimic the free market cryptographic currency we see in the cryptocurrency world, there is a similarity when it comes to people rushing into anything because they like what it looks like. It reminds me of pets.com in the early 2000s. So I think it's important that people understand what they're getting into. There are some good ICOs that are like EOS or something. They actually have fundamentals. They have basic fundamentals. But do not invest in cryptocurrencies you know nothing about because there's a good chance they will crash before the consolidation of all cryptocurrencies in the near future.
Just very simply, don't be a dumbass. And I have to say that for legal advice and whatever you said before, ditto, this is not legal advice or da-da-da-da-da. It doesn't matter. But I think it's also very interesting because I'm here at the Bitcoin conference in Miami, Florida, and you see all these guys in these like Lamborghinis and Ferraris just stacked all around the hotel because it was a way for a lot of people to make a lot of money really quickly. But again, it's extremely unpredictable. It goes up and it goes down. And sadly, there's been kind of a different dichotomy here. And I think Jeff Berwick was the last speaker that was speaking at the conference. And he was like, hey, guys, we're here to remind you that this cryptocurrency thing is about getting rid of central bankers and helping spread freedom and liberty while helping out the common man. And then everyone cheered and erupted. But there definitely is this kind of get-rich-quick scheme kind of community, Wall Street butthole types that have kind of also are being very domineering in this cryptocurrency arena. And that's why, there is a lot of manipulation. There is a lot of uncertainty. There is a lot of people just in it for the money and forgetting the real cause and the real root and the real community that has brought Bitcoin from its infancies to where it is now. And very interesting, it was also curious to see at the same time as we're seeing this kind of manipulation, this kind of price going down dramatically, this kind of escalation of the war of words with governments talking about regulating and taxing people who have cryptocurrencies. And that's why we just heard that the U.S. Department of Treasury is now attempting to police crypto exchanges, even trying to report people to the IRS, tax them to death, and of course make it very difficult because it's almost impossible, especially with this recent tax code, to stay up to code and to document and to have all the financial numbers figured out when it comes to your taxes and Bitcoin. Josh, what do you think about that?
Well, as I kind of went into last week, Luke, there was a massive attempt on January 1st through IRS tax code 1031 in order to make it a taxable event every time you go from one cryptocurrency to another back to whatever you're trading, which is almost impossible to enforce. I don't think it's really too concerning because I don't think they will long-term get away with it. In fact, I think it'll actually just keep people more into crypto and not cashing out back into fiat, which is the ultimate bubble, which is something that we all want to escape at all costs. Exactly what you went into there, that this is a revolution against central banks, not just a get-rich-quick scheme. A lot of people have been really, I guess you could say greedy in one way and spoiled in another way by the recent rise of cryptocurrency, thinking that it's just going to go up all the time. Well, it's not always going to go up. It is a core fundamental that these are ways to escape the central banking system. But of course, the government is going to do everything they can to steal money. That's what they do best. I mean, that's basically the only thing they're efficient in is stealing people's money, but they still aren't efficient enough to stop people from using cryptocurrencies, which is why they have all of this, propaganda and psyop tactic in order to confuse people about cryptocurrencies, push people into infighting like they have, because as James Corbett just recently did a video which was incredibly well said, where he kind of went into the fact that people are looking at digital currencies by central banks in the same light as they see Bitcoin and blockchain. They're not all synonymous. They're all very different things that happen to have some kind of relevance to each other. So I think that this is really important to understand.
Yeah, the propaganda is increasing, as we're just seeing even now this week, with a proposed U.S. task force in order to stop terrorism in the cryptocurrency world. And in reality, we know that terrorism, majority of it, predominantly, most of it, 99.9% of it, is financed through fiat, through dollars. So like, the propaganda is escalating on so many different ways. And I think the powers that be, you could kind of make an argument that they're kind of using this kind of moment to take advantage and to hit cryptocurrencies when they're low.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is one of the biggest examples of hypocrisy, is that they think that they're going to stop terrorism by, stopping people from, freely exchanging goods for services with cryptocurrencies. Meanwhile, like you mentioned, 99.9% of money used to finance terrorism is fiat. So should we ban fiat? Well, maybe. And on top of that, what is the biggest financier of terrorism? Government. Government has been sponsoring terrorism for decades, creating the Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution, repeat, which is why maybe it all comes down to, banning government. Because if we're really going to worry about, people using Bitcoin, which, by the way, is a lot more traceable than using paper fiat in a suitcase, then maybe we should be looking at government, which actually does finance terrorism. Al-Qaeda, the Taliban meeting in the White House in the 80s, Iraqi's Ba'athist Party, ISIS, obviously. There's so many examples. And the hypocrisy just piles so high. Of course, not that long ago, I believe it was last year under Trump, there was a move in order to stop people at the border when they're crossing and try and check their Bitcoin wallets, which I think it was called Combating Money Laundering, Terrorist Financing, and Counterfeiting Act of 2017. And again, cannot be enforced. If we want to stop terrorism, we have to stop the government from funding terrorism, not people trying to, make a bit of money and invest in something that is pulling away from the central banking system that enslaves us. So I think that it's important that we understand the differences. The idea of people financing terrorism with Bitcoin, a woman was just caught 2 weeks ago trying to do that because it was traceable. You can trace one address to another to a bank account. Unless you are getting all your money from, something like Steemit and, transferring it around, you are basically transparent, out in the open. People can see what you're doing. So the idea is absurd. It's just an excuse to call any, free individual a terrorist while ignoring the fact that, well, wait a second, we are the ones that are funding terrorism. We are the ones that are creating it. We are the ones that are bombing countries overseas and arming the rebels and then causing a new... overseas and arming the rebels and then causing a new problem to give an excuse to go back in. It's all the same old nonsense over again. And this leads me to the next story.
Wait. I just think they want a monopoly of control when it comes to arming terrorism. They're like, we could only do it, not you. And by that same kind of logic, we might as well ban forks because it makes people fat asses. Like, it makes no sense at all, and it's interesting to see them specifically pinpoint Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, especially during this time. Go ahead, Josh.
Well, absolutely, and it's important to understand that the blockchain can be used for good and evil. So, again, James Corbett went into recently, something I've been talking about for quite a long time at World Alternative Media, is that the blockchain is kind of like guns. You can use a gun to massacre a whole bunch of people, but you could also use a gun to save a whole bunch of people from being massacred. So we have to understand the difference, which I'll go into in a second, but that kind of leads me to the next article, which is Merkel and Macron call for a ban on cryptos in Europe. Again, not enforceable in a quote-unquote, whatever you want to call it, democracy. It is absolutely impossible to truly ban cryptocurrencies. In fact, if anyone is going to be flooding out of something, it's going to be out of fiat into cryptocurrencies. They know their time is up. They know people are waking up to the monetary system fraud. They know that people are trying to protect their wealth because they've been stolen from for so many years by government, and they are worried, they are scared, and they're doing everything they can to try and FUD the market and cause it to dip. And then they go in and buy it up low. Exactly something that you'd expect from a government that is trying to manipulate markets and tax people to death. But of course, on top of that, we have to remember, like I said earlier, that bankers still use Bitcoin in order to grow their own wealth because they know their empire is coming down. So people like Mario Draghi, the head of the ECB, the European Central Bank, is a Goldman Sachs boy. And being a Goldman Sachs boy, he is involved in cryptocurrencies himself. He has probably got a lot of investments in them, as many at Goldman Sachs have been getting themselves deep into. So the idea of them banning it would come down to the ECB in the end and the European Union. And I don't see them doing that. They will try and tax it. They will try to regulate it. But in the end, it won't matter because the banking system is coming to its dying days. The banking system is going down, and people, this is exactly why it's going down. People are flooding into free market cryptocurrencies, diversifying their portfolio, gold, silver as well. This is so important, and we are seeing the end to all of this, massive Ponzi scheme that we call the central banking system.
I was talking exactly about this with Max Kaiser yesterday, and he made the point, like, if you want to see a Ponzi scheme, look at the central banking systems and how they manipulate the markets and how they're overinflated and how ultimately it is a grand scheme against the people. Just look at the way it works. Just look at the secrecy behind it. Look at the fact that there hasn't been any real audits of the U.S. quasi-private Federal Reserve banking system. That's why they kind of see it as a threat. But the bigger point that you made here that I think is important for everyone to understand, just because these people are against it doesn't mean it can't be used for bad, like we've seen this week with the BitConnect crash and the other Ponzi schemes that have been involved and the dirty tricks that people do use cryptocurrencies to do bad things and hurt other people. Again, everything is a double-edged sword. The internet, fiat, cryptocurrencies, a fork. It's all about how you treat it and being responsible and not just biased on one side. But what do you have on the BitConnect story that everyone here is talking about a lot?
Yeah, well, absolutely. It dropped about 96 or 97% in 24 hours, went from a high of $400 and something US dollars.
But for people who don't understand, what is BitConnect?
BitConnect is basically this massive company that has been bringing in a ton of Bitcoin, getting people to give them a whole bunch of Bitcoin, and then giving them these BitConnect tokens where they promise they will get like these residual payments, the usual Ponzi scheme kind of scenario. And what that has led to is a whole bunch of people giving them insane amounts of money, over $1 billion. And at once, we saw their website go down the other day, and the drop all the way from $400 and something to around $20 US. And, they have kind of disappeared on this. They're not really giving a good explanation other than, well, they got a cease and desist order recently. Absolute nonsense. This is exactly why people need to be self-responsible, because the hallmark of freedom itself is self-responsibility, which is why people have to do their own due diligence, which we see so many Ponzi schemes popping up, and this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say we should avoid these, altcoins that we know nothing about. Oh, well, the logo looks cool. It's a cool color. It has a cool name. Well, that isn't.
It has Snoop Dogg promoting it. Snoop Dogg's promoting this one.
Yeah, exactly. Don't fall for these kinds of things, these tricks, like Potcoin, where Dennis Rodman is going to North Korea wearing a Potcoin shirt, and everyone's like, okay, we got to buy it up, and there's a pump, and then we see it all dump down. This is not how this market's supposed to work. Of course, the free market's always right, and people are often not that smart. For example, people go to the least quality burger joint called, McDonald's. And
McMurder Burger.
Yeah, exactly. But is it high quality? No. Are the fundamentals good? No. It's a terrible quality restaurant, but people go there. It's one of the biggest burger joints in the world. And this is just kind of the reality of things. And we saw that in the .com bubble. And the ones with bad fundamentals will come crashing down. Bitcoin to the crypto bubble is like Amazon and Google and YouTube, or YouTube wasn't around, Amazon and Google to the .com bubble. we don't want to invest in pets.com. We want to invest in Amazon early on, except for the difference is, of course, this is decentralized and will actually pull away from the establishment system that we are trying to get away from. But I wanted to finish this off quickly, Luke, by just going quickly into the difference between fiat and Bitcoin, because no matter how many videos I do on this, there will always be those comments. And I understand there's a lot of confusion about it. Fiat is centrally planned legal tender currency based in quantitative easing debt, just devaluing it by its printing. There's no cap on creation. While Bitcoin is decentralized free market, has 21 million tokens that will ever be created by the year 2140, and that is it. Fundamentally, it cannot go higher. There can be forks with different ideas at hand, but Bitcoin will never surpass that mark. So therefore, it halves quite frequently, which grows the value, and it is absolutely the opposite of fiat. Of course, it's based in scarcity, demand, and application use. And I have to always go over this point, Luke, because there are a lot of people that look at it and they see it's created out of thin air, so it must be the same as fiat. Fiat has a set of fundamentals that is based in debt and nonstop quantitative easing and fractional reserve lending. They are very different from each other. There are attempts to create a global a global centrally planned cryptocurrency, but they are not the same as Bitcoin. Bitcoin will never be used as a global special drawing rights currency at the IMF. And there are a lot of videos going around spreading a lot of misinformation about this. It will not happen. They will use another digital currency like maybe Ripple or something and trick people into buying it up because it looks shiny and has a cool name. I always have to go into that point, Luke.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be careful because establishment could come in. We're seeing Facebook, we're seeing the UK government, we're seeing all these other institutions that are, in the long run, morally wrong and corrupt, talking about going into the cryptocurrency world, trying to get their foot into the door from something that was originally decentralized, something that people, of course, see as a threat, and is very difficult to stop. They can make it difficult for users to take out their money or to use it, but there really is no way of getting rid of Bitcoin or of cryptocurrencies. You would have to get rid of the entire internet. You could always change your IP. You could always mask who you are online. You could always figure out a runaround, and this is a problem, this is a paradox that I'm seeing that will come to a big clash, I think, sooner or later. This is so unpredictable. This is such a fun, crazy, wild ride where you never know what's going to happen. Always try to use your best mind. Always try to do the right thing. Be smart. Don't be stupid. Don't just go out there buying Ferraris. Don't just always try to get rich. When you do those things, humanity and life will always kick you in the butt when your morals and your principles are wrong. So other than that, Josh, I think it's been a crazy week. Bitcoin's been going down, cryptocurrency's been going down, but there's also a lot of optimism and a lot of hope. And I just wanted to thank you for bringing everyone into the loop and letting us know exactly what happened this week with cryptocurrencies. To check out Josh, his YouTube channel will be in the description below. If you found
wearechange.org, We Are Change on YouTube. Check him out. Subscribe. And he's right, Bitcoin, it's not just going to, disappear. And even if he talked about, shutting down, even if they shut down the internet, if you put it on a thumb drive, you can move around with it. All you need is a computer. Don't need the internet, you need the computer. But transactions wouldn't be able to be processed in the same way. And that's where the difficulty if the internet, ends, what happens then? Well, basically, the Bitcoins would be with the wallet. You wouldn't be able to transfer the Bitcoins from one wallet to the other, but you'd be able to transfer wallets with the encryption keys. But that makes it really difficult. Now you can have multiple wallets set up. Let's say you had 20 Bitcoin, you could set up 20 wallets and, transfer a Bitcoin to each wallet, and then put those wallets onto a thumb drive, have your encryption key for each, wallet, and then now you can transfer Bitcoin by giving someone that wallet. And that's happened. I've heard of that actually happening. Definitely early on, when one Bitcoin could have been $20, $15, right around there. Yeah, just put Bitcoin on, in a wallet, put it on a thumb drive, and a lot of times that was done to prevent tracing. You bought the wallet with the encryption key. You didn't transfer it. And then other ways that people try to do it is when they sell a Bitcoin, they try to sell it privately. You bring me cash, I'll transfer my Bitcoin into your wallet. And people are like, well, you still get tracked by Bitcoin. That was one thing brought up. You still get tracked by Bitcoin when you exchange it at the bank or whatever. Well, no, not always. You can transfer Bitcoins for cash back to the fiat, currency. You can still, meet people and do the transaction and never use a bank. That's what they don't like about it. But I know a lot of these Bitcoin people don't want to talk about that part of it because they don't want it to look negative. But that's the truth about it, and that's the pro about it. And the thing is, it's not going away. There's going to be people that are going to use Bitcoin. Now, the value depends on how many people will use Bitcoin. But I really I don't see it going anywhere too far down. More and more people are using it. And even the elite are starting to purchase it. I urge people to always buy up when it drops too, because guess what? That's what the elite are doing. Sometimes they're purposely trying to make it drop so they can buy it up. Or the low. And we've talked about Bitcoin for such a long time. I want to cover this article. I thought I had it up here. I might have misplaced it here. Let me see if I can search for it real quick. Okay. This out of CoinDesk. Rapper 50 Cent is now a Bitcoin millionaire. Says here, rapper 50 Cent's move to accept Bitcoin for his 2014 Animal Ambition album has resulted in a multi-million-dollar windfall. On Tuesday, celebrity gossip site TMZ reported that 50 Cent, whose real name is Curtis Jackson, had garnered about 700 Bitcoin after moving to accept the cryptocurrency for the album. At the time, the rapper was accepting payments through processor startup BitPay. At the time, that amount was worth about $400,000. And by the publication's estimation, his holdings are now worth somewhere between $7 million and $9 million. I heard 8.5. The performance artist has confirmed the TMZ article, posting its text to Instagram and writing, "Not bad for a kid from Southside. I'm so proud of me." In a comment on the social media site, he claimed that he had forgotten about the cash of Bitcoin in the years since the Animal Ambition move. Jackson has a history of entrepreneurial success, mostly famous as an early investor in Glacia, which Coca-Cola later acquired for $4.1 billion. Vitamin water. He has an extensive portfolio that includes a clothing line, dietary supplement, and real estate, among other things. Yet he made waves by taking the step to accept Bitcoin for the album, joining the ranks of other musicians who in past years have made similar moves. That year, for example, rock group Mastodon similarly started taking Bitcoin via BitPay. And in November of last year, Icelandic singer Björk revealed that her Utopia album would be available to buyers using multiple cryptocurrencies. And, when I first started talking about Bitcoin, I kicked myself in the butt that I didn't get into it back then. When I first heard about it, first had other, libertarians and people that were into cryptocurrencies and really start talking about it and pushing for it. And, I pushed for the idea. I thought the idea was great. I seen the benefits of it. But I think because of where the freedom, liberty movement was at the time too, I thought, this is just going to fade out. You see slowly people here and there starting to fade out of the liberty movement. That's who was pushing it to me the most. Was within the libertarian liberty, Ron Paul movement. These were the people that were pushing it around me. So I'm like, I'm looking at it. I'm like, is society going to go along with this? What I really forgot was we had to look at the youth. The youth at the time, they were becoming techies. There is a large amount of the younger people that are techies. They're into this. And then people within my age range, they're into this. They like this type of stuff. I should have known back then. $15 a Bitcoin. And how many Bitcoins I could have bought and just sat there with them. So it's one of those things that, I could look at it right now and go, it's not going to really go anywhere from here. Not buy any. And then by not buying anything, I could potentially lose out on, holding the value of my wealth. Being able to keep it from sinking or get real rich off of it or lose it. That's why I say put your eggs in multiple baskets. Buy a little bit of Bitcoin, buy a little bit of Litecoin, some of the more reputable alternative cryptocurrencies, gold, silver, food, water, land. Invest in multiple things. Invest in your future. That's really the best advice I can give anybody. We don't know what's going to play out in politics. It seems that there's secret societies within our agencies like the FBI that continue to try to, create these coups within our government to push out Trump because they don't like him. Missing texts that just happen to be in a time period that we kind of need to see those texts. Those are probably very incriminating if the rest of the texts are pointing to this time period being incriminating. Stay tuned here on UCY.tv. Thank you all for tuning in.